Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Perth Paisley Podcast, a podcast dedicated to a side that had no competitive fixture last weekend, the mighty Heart of Midlothian Football Club. I'm one of your hosts, Adam Kennedy, and joining me to have a gab about the Gorgie, as always, is Mr. Daniel McIver. How are we doing, Daniel?
Gab about the Gorgie. You're getting better with these intros every single time. I'm doing very well. How are you, especially after we got a lot of messages about your COVID scare last week?
Yeah, all good, thank you, mate. Obviously, I'm more delighted about you being complimentary with regards to my intros rather than escaping coronavirus, but yeah. No, my only concern today is dragging out the conversation for this podcast because we've got a few wee things to discuss with obviously having no fixture and whatever, but we're going to chat about what's been happening with Hearts since the last episode. So we've got a new arrival to discuss. We've got the interview that the club shared with Sporting Director Joe Savage. We've got a contract extension to one of our favourite players to talk about. And we're going to end with a little sort of, I don't want to say a happy segment because I'd imagine that it'll be, well, flowing with positivity, this podcast, but something a little bit more light-hearted to end on, let's say, with a Vintage Maroon XI courtesy of Maroon Tinted Specs. But, however, where better to start than the news that came out today on the day of recording that the SFA have announced that the bottom two professional leagues of the Scottish Professional Football League, Leagues 1 and 2, along with the Scottish Cup, have been put on hold for 3 weeks. Is this any real surprise to you, Daniel, to see this trio of competitions suspended?
Yes and no. No, I'm not surprised at all because I think it's the way that everything's been pointing. What I am kind of surprised at, however, is that the Championship has been able to stay. I'm delighted, and I think it should, by a few points that we will inevitably get into in a wee minute. But just with the way that this governing body operates, and that is something we will definitely get onto in the next few minutes, I'm just surprised they actually took the initiative to keep this league going. Obviously, it's incredibly debatable, especially as, which again we'll also get to, there is one full-time club that has been affected incredibly negatively by this, but I do get the reasoning behind it because with the exception of that one full-time team, the rest of the teams in those leagues are part-time. I've actually just remembered Queen's Park and they're full-time, but you know what I mean. The majority of those teams are part-time, which means it is incredibly hard to maintain a social bubble, and that is kind of how we've been operating with this. The kind of prerequisite was that all players who play in the Scottish leagues were going to be bubbling together. That's really easy to do when you're a full-time club because all the players' work life is the football club, and then they just go home and be with their families. Part-time, however, it's split between home life, their actual careers, and then football, which means it is near on impossible to try and maintain anything, especially when you don't test, which is another aspect because clubs allegedly could not afford to test, which of course we'll get into that as well due to grants and provisions that have been given. However, it's a very intricate and delicate situation, so thankfully we have the most professional lot organising it, or we actually just have a bunch of children who seem to have ran into a room and went, we'll sort this, and never have left. But what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think you've touched on it there. I think the key point that we could take away from all this is the Scottish Games struggles sort of due to a lack of resources. So I think that suspension and that sort of was pretty much inevitable. Obviously, you've been very vocal about it on Twitter, and you reckon that the Championship's not too far behind.
I think earlier in the day I was a lot more pessimistic. I was like, there is no chance this is happening, and the basis on that, before I should kind of caveat, is that I believed clubs were going to use the excuse we can't afford to test, despite the fact James Anderson gave money, and recently the government gave grants to clubs from the Championship down. They gave all money to every team. However, The Premiership, it is just a loan. They had to pay it all back, whereas from the Championship down, it was a grant. You were just given the money. And I was thinking they're just going to say they don't have the money to do it, and so many clubs are going to do it that we're going to have to be halted. However, Barry Anderson stated, I don't know where he's got his statistics from, so take this with a pinch of salt. But Barry Anderson seems to think that from now until the end of the season, for every Championship club to test weekly, it'll be between £50,000 and £60,000. Now, that is nowhere near the amount of money that was given to the clubs. So that should be fine. They should be able to do that, no problem at all. Because if they have done with that money that it was given to them for, that's a sentence, if they've used that money in the correct way, I should say, then that should be no issue. 50 to 60 grand across the next 5 months is fine. However,
still adds up though, doesn't it?
It does, but it is just that one sum, and they were given $500,000 in the grant. So 50,000 out of $500,000.
It's a fraction. It's what, 10% of it or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who I feel more for. The part-time clubs with not having the resources, or the full-timers, like you say, your Queen's Park, Falkirk, Thistle. Like, these are all, obviously, they're the trio that I can think of off the top of my head, currently occupying Leagues 1 and 2. It's bound to be frustrating not being able to, obviously, follow that through and try and crack on with their season. Thistle in particular.
I was just about to say, the Thistle statement was heartbreaking.
But it's just, I really feel for Thistle, probably first and foremost, given obviously the whole nonsense about their. I love how they even said in the statement the fact that they were demoted as opposed to relegated. I thought that made me chuckle a wee bit, but I just feel for them with that. And then obviously this is like the latest kind of block that they've been hit with. So I don't know. There's something not quite right. I don't know what they've done with the dough, like you say, because if it is just a small fraction, then surely they can crack on.
It should be fine. It should, and obviously the two teams that you kind of look to in our league that could potentially knacker it is the two part-time teams, because weirdly there's a situation where there's a couple of full-time teams who can't play, but there's a couple of part-time teams that can play due to the fact that Alloa and Arbroath are in our league and they're part-time. However, they're the two clubs that you would imagine will go, we can't test. However, $500,000 given to Alloa, that they wouldn't see if a normal season was going on. Surely that would be less than what they make in gates in a full year.
No, of course, and I think I'd be concerned if I was a Greenock Morton fan as well. They also seem to kind of, well, their financial struggles have been highlighted somewhat, and I think it's probably fair to chuck them in that same bracket.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, but I don't know. Anyway, but let's just eliminate sort of the only real negative talking point. Kind of this pod, because there are a plethora of positives to discuss. The first of which is a new signing down Gorgie Way. So Hearts confirmed their first signing of the January window with the addition of former Dundee United, Celtic and Aberdeen winger Gary Mackay Steven after his New York City FC contract expired. Daniel, I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts, because I listened back to last week's podcast and you said this. Have you got any wingers on the shortlist? No.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do indeed.
It's not Gary Mackay Steven, because I see that.
It's not Gary Mackay Steven. I don't want him. I don't want Greg Stewart either. I don't want either of them to come.
I'd take either of them. They're better than what we've got.
No,
Why?
they're not.
Why?
They're both old men who have no legs anymore. We're just speaking about Jamie Walker with no legs. So you want to sign 31-year-old Gary Mackay Steven and 30-year-old Greg Stewart?
I guarantee they'd put a better shift in than Jamie Walker.
Well, I could put in a better shift than Jamie Walker, because at least I'd try. Right, I did say that. However, if people go back and listen to the full episode, you will understand I am in a rant, a full-on rant about Jamie Walker, and therefore not really thinking. And also, Greg Stewart comes into that rant as well. And then
I've just chucked the pair of them under the bus, haven't I? Really?
Yeah, you have.
Sorry, mate.
Gary Mackay Steven then gets mentioned at the end, and I'm in full rage mode. So you could have said Messi, and I would have been like, "He's too old, mate." Like, I would have found an issue with whoever you had mentioned. However, I then, even while editing, I was thinking, I stand by what I said about Jamie Walker. I stand by what I said about Greg Stewart. If we end up signing Gary Mackay Steven, I'm going to get ruined for this.
So what are you saying to me now?
Mere days later, we sign him. And what I'm saying now is that I don't think we've had a bigger coup than signing Stephen Naismith permanently.
Or sort of since Stephen Naismith for GMS.
So
I'd probably go along with that.
My logic behind that, I should probably express that. So you look at kind of in the Anne Budge era, I guess you could say the biggest signings, the 5 in my opinion, have been, this is not in any order, this is just the names, have been John Souttar, Stephen Naismith, Christoph Berra, Craig Gordon, and Gary Mackay Steven now. You could put Liam Boyce in that as well.
I was thinking sort of as unknowns. I was going to say Michael Smith and Peter Haring arguably could be as well.
Absolutely. What I mean by these 5 signs is the name value behind them.
Yeah. No. I get where you're coming from.
The logic I'm using, however, that Gary Mackay Steven is bigger than most of them is that Craig Gordon and Christoph Berra are in the same boat. How they both said they wanted to come back to the club. They obviously have personal and emotional connections to Hearts. Started their careers there, both Hearts fans. So it's not as surprising that we managed to get them in. Even Liam Boyce, who we will include in this little thing, still kind of had ties to the club through Austin McPhee, the Northern Ireland job. We were in the Premiership at the time. It was kind of like, right, okay, he could come in and kind of boost us back up the table. However...
And, sorry, with all due respect, Hearts are a miles bigger club than Burton Albion and Ross County.
Absolutely. That's another fantastic aspect of that. However, Stephen Naismith is a multiple-time Scottish Premier League winner, over 50. Obviously, he got his 50th cap when he was at us. However, countless caps for Scotland, played in the Barclays Premier League for nearly a decade, at the top level of the sport. Him signing for us was quite a coup at the time. John Souttar, January 2016, quite a comparable signing, a former Dundee United guy in January, was one of the highest touted youngsters there is, and he came to us in what was, I know Dundee United had to sell because they were going through a bit of kind of financial insecurity. They didn't know what was going to happen, and he was kind of their only saleable asset, so we came in for him. But Gary Mackay Steven I'd put on that level because it's us in the Championship, and if rumours are to be believed, he turned down Aberdeen.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my own reasons kind of for that later on. I think that same window that they lost John Souttar, did Gary Mackay Steven and Stuart Armstrong both sign for Celtic?
I believe so.
Was that the same day? Yeah. Or they both signed on deadline day, but I think GMS had agreed a pre-contract beforehand. Is that right?
I think so, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that is a shocking window, but it's fair to say I'm ecstatic with this signing. I've always had a soft spot for Gary Mackay Steven. He's one of those players that I think you sort of can't help but admire, even despite the former clubs that he's played for and the fact that he's a boyhood Hibs fan with Highbees in his email address. I mean, when I watched that, there's always been kind of a little debate as to who he supported, and then I remember watching the open goal interview with Cy Ferry the first time, and my heart just sank, and I was adamant that once Aberdeen had picked him up after his Celtic spell, that the opportunity for us to sign him had gone and that was it. But I think what's key, you briefly touched on it there, is that in a time of real need we've been able to secure his signature, and I'm just amazed because Hearts have made a signing that firstly the majority of fans wanted, and secondly that actually genuinely makes sense.
2021's off to a weird start. Hearts are doing sensible business. This year's going to be worse than 2020.
It really will. I want to say, because Aaron Fraser pointed me in the direction of the video on the SPFL YouTube channel. There's one that shows kind of his best skills, tricks and goals.
Is it the one at Kilmarnock?
Honestly, mate, there's a catalogue of them, but he was a Soccer AM Showboat regular back in the day. If I could sum it up, he's a wing king with excitement, and it's fair to say that I was nearly wing king with excitement, if you know what I mean.
And that's why the title is that, lads. We've had that planned for the start. Hope you liked it.
But no, obviously, like I say, I watched his open goal interview back, and I was encouraged when he spoke about his desire to play, because I too thought, you mentioned that he rejected Aberdeen, I thought he was destined to go back to the Dons. But then I remembered the plethora of wide players that Aberdeen have at their disposal, and I had to get a little list on the go. So, Niall McGinn, Ryan Hedges, Johnny Hayes, Connor McLennan, Scott Wright and Matty Kennedy all play on the flanks. That's 6 wingers. And I know that they play a 3 at the back, so some might be seen as wing backs.
And they might be losing Scott Wright allegedly to Rangers.
Yeah, so I think, or at least in my opinion anyway, his playing opportunities may have been somewhat limited, whereas he comes into us as first choice, and I think ultimately that's what's tipped it in our favour. I don't know whether you'd say the same.
I agree, and wages.
Yeah,
we can offer. I don't care that we're in the Championship. We have the 3rd highest wage bill in Scotland, so there is that aspect of it. But you're completely spot on. He will know that. Listen, he'll have done his research. He's no stupid. He won't just sign for a team, as you just said, without thinking about it. He'll have watched our games and seen probably that, okay, that Ginnelly boy's good. However, he's not on my side, so I don't really need to worry about him. Who's my competition? Oh. And he must have just been like, right, well, even if I've got one leg, I'm still getting into this team.
Even then, you said that Ginnelly's on the other side. I actually see, when you watch it, it looks as though he's comfortable on either side, even through the middle, sort of in a support role. So I think that flexibility is fantastic. And to be honest, I think us playing in the Championship's great for him too, because I don't want to be disrespectful here, but if we were in the Premiership and in dire need of this signing, that rush to kind of get him up to match sharpness would be crazy. Whereas I think it's more lax given the quality of opposition that we're up against. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. It means that there's so much less pressure on him, because even if he's having off days, he still should be able to take the pick. I cannot wait, Adam, for... We're playing Alloa this weekend, hopefully, if we're even allowed to play football, because Hearts just seem to be banned from playing football just now. If he can play, I don't know if he can play, but I just want to see him ripping apart defenders with elasticos, McGeady spinning inside and hitting a Rabona for 40 yards. I can't wait.
No, I can't wait to see him pull on that maroon jersey either. But of course, GMS has joined what most would consider a Premiership squad with sort of full international players, one of whom has committed their future to Heart and Midlothian. Daniel, how delighted are you to see Michael Smith commit to the Jambos till the summer of 2022?
I screamed. I'm not even joking. I was sat working and I was just like, I'll just quickly check Twitter. So that, and I literally went, oh! I literally did that. I'm so, honestly, listen, I have made no bones about it. Michael Smith, this is a big call, but we'll get to it later in the video as well. He's my favourite right back to ever play for the club.
Wow, it's a big statement given you've got the former gaffer.
I know.
You've got Callum Patterson off the top of my head.
I know, but they're the only two that come close, and they both come very close. But I just love Michael Smith. I love him so much. He's a beautiful dad, and I couldn't be happy. He's also, though, been our best player in the last 4 years.
Easy.
He's the best thing Ian Cathro ever gave to this football club. He's the only thing Ian Cathro ever gave to this football club.
Do you know, it's funny, I had a chat with my workmate Lewis about this today. How can Ian Cathro come into Hearts and get it spot on with the signings of Smith and Lafferty, and yet in that same window we pick up Rafa Jelak and Cole Stockton in similar positions? I don't understand how somebody can get it bang on or just way off the mark like that.
In fairness, I think it's because it wasn't him. It was Austin
McPhee
going.
Austin McPhee, like,
going, I've got 2 Northern Irish guys. Hold on, I'll bring them in. Ian, you get the other 2, so we've got depth. I'll bring these 2 in.
Oh, listen, that's probably summed it all up.
Do you remember that story? This is such a side note, but just you mentioned Lafferty there. Do you remember that story where Lafferty spoke about the fact that when they were on that pre-season tour in Ireland?
Oh no, I know what you're going to say.
Lafferty Walker,
about the front 3.
Yeah. Lafferty, Walker and Isma got taken to a pub, given whiskey, and that Cathro went, I want 60 goals between the 3 of you. And in that season, we got 20, and Lafferty got 19 of them.
Jeez, that's weird. Oh dear. Anyway, that's just... that actually sends shivers down my spine.
I love that story. Just they were given whiskey. That's surely the first red flag.
Probably. It just... listen, you're right. Ian Cathro, for all his faults, did give us Michael Smith, but maybe it was Austin McPhee. But I'm
Benefit of the doubt
as well.
Benefit of the doubt, it was Ian Cathro. Let's just give him that.
Yeah, that was all on him. That's what earned him his move to Wolves.
Exactly.
But yeah, I share those exact same thoughts on Michael Smith. I mean, I've ran out of superlatives now for Michael Smith. He's the best footballer at the club in my opinion, and ultimately we all dream of a team of Michael Smiths, both on the park and sort of his desire and want to play for the club, and realising how lucky he is to play for Hearts.
He just gets it. It. I also did some research. Michael Smith now, if he sees out the end of his contract with us, we will officially be the club he has played longest for.
How? Because it was 2017 he joined?
Yep, so it'll have been 5 years, and previously the longest stint he had was 3 years 11 months at Peterborough.
3 years. Interesting.
I
mean, I think. Listen, I've already bashed Ross County and Burton Albion, but who was he at? Bristol Rovers and Peterborough.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a contest, is it?
No. By the way, I'm really sorry to go back. However, I've just said a statistic, and I just remembered I had literally one other statistic, and it was about Gary Mackay Steven. So we're going back.
Right, go on.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I found out that on average, Elliot Freer in a game takes on his man average 0.3% of the time.
0.3%?
Yeah. Jordan Roberts does it 1.2%.
Jesus.
Gary Mackay Steven averages in his time in Scotland 72% take-ons.
Jesus.
I'm not saying he's going to come in and do that, but I am saying that.
But that's the sign of a top player, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody that's willing to give up possession and then ultimately do everything to sort of get it back.
Yeah, so I'm very sorry about going back, but I just remembered that I had that stat ready.
No, that's an absolute belter. Where did you get that from?
Transfermarket.com. The place where every single football podcaster goes for their stats.
And in my case, last week, out of contract SPFL Premiership players. So shout out Transfer Market. But
absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's just obviously it's funny that you mention sort of a player that we've recruited and now obviously a member that he joins in the playing squad. Somebody that's obviously tasked with putting all this together is the new sporting director, Joe Savage. We've obviously both watched his interview, as I would imagine that the majority of Jambos listening into this have. What did you make of his little sit down with Hearts, mate?
Oh, he talked very well. He talks very well. He's very human, I felt.
Yeah, it's a good sign, first and foremost, particularly in recruitment, I'd say.
He just feels really like he just seems like quite a laugh, to be honest. Where he was just like, I technically was a professional football player. I don't know if I could be classed as one.
I know, and then he started listing off who was it, Stenhousemuir and Albion Rovers or something. Listen, if you've played, you've played. It shouldn't matter who you've played for.
But his actual off the field CV, however, was far more impressive, because joined Hamilton and they obviously got promoted, went to Norwich, they got promoted, went to Preston, and as he put it, they've been pushing in the top 6 consistently with a bottom 6 budget. Now, as we know, one of our incredibly vocal and loyal listeners, Rick, he'll be able to tell us more if they have been operating with a bottom 6 budget, but I'm going to believe him if he says that, because that would be quite an easy thing to prove right or wrong. So he clearly has experience in the role that he's in, and he spoke about how during the first lockdown to when he started to kind of read more and do more research into the sporting director role, and when he realised it was coming up here, he couldn't not go for it. And as he said himself, he's been involved in getting Michael Smith signed to a new deal. According to him, Gary Mackay Steven was Robbie Nielsen's #1 target on his list for January, and he helped get it through. He phoned his agent and stuff like that. So I know it's kind of just like, if Roy Keane was here, he'd be like, well, that's his job, so he shouldn't be praised for it. However, I think he should, Roy. I think he should. What about you, though?
Yeah, no, like you say, with the GMS signing and Michael Smith's contract, he's off to a blinding start already. So that being said, we've still got 2 extensions we'd like to see. So if you happen to be listening, Mr. Savage, that would be fantastic. But no, it was very complimentary about Hearts. The Scottish game itself seems to be fully aware of the opportunity he has. You're right in that his track record with obviously working with Alex Neil is very impressive. And I think the Preston link is key to all this as well, given the players that we've been linked with recently. So there obviously seems to be a lot of responsibility, given he talked about a variety of different stuff. He mentioned the academy, women's team, obviously the recruitment first and foremost, analysis. So it's encouraging that we've identified the areas that we need to improve, the players to strengthen the team, and what have you. So I'm just delighted that that's the case. Hopefully it's the start of a successful tenure.
Absolutely. Again, I'm really sorry to do this. I'm all over the place today. But speaking about interviews, Gary Mackay Steven's interview, he has the softest voice. He's got a lovely voice. He's from Thurso, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely.
Which I had never even heard of prior to him.
Did you not? Gary Mackay Steven put Thurso on the map for you.
What can I say?
He's got a lovely voice. And
it was the smile, the little twinkle in his eye, that cheesy grin.
He's just beautiful, isn't he?
What a guy.
He looks like Joel Sked as well.
So you've just said that he's beautiful, but it looks like Joel Sked.
Wow. Listen, Joel Sked's an attractive man.
I'm not saying he's not, but I'm not sure whether Joel would say that.
You think Joel is unattractive.
No, Joel seems like the type of guy that doesn't give a toss. So I'd just be inclined to know if that's the case.
Listen, I can sense that you're trying to wriggle your way out of this. I will get in contact with Mr. Joel Sked and get his opinion on the situation.
You do that. That sounds like a plan. So obviously that's basically the kind of 3 main talking points, isn't it, really? Gary Mackay Steven, Michael Smith, Joe Savage. Anything else you want to mention before we get on to the Vintage Maroon 11?
Not really. What I'm literally going to do right now, because we are recording this obviously Monday night, as Brora and Camelin are currently playing, so I'm going to have a look at what the score is. No, we're not. What? Has it been delayed? Oh no, it's just that BBC didn't get updates. Sorry, I went onto BBC to try and get updates, and apparently they're not doing updates.
I was going to say live score would be pretty useless as well, you'd have thought.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go into... Actually, this is absolutely top quality content.
No, tell a lie.
Here.
Live score have updated it, and it's very interesting.
What is the score then? You can bring us the news.
At half time, it's Camelon Juniors 1, Brora Rangers 0.
Bloody hell.
Courtesy of a 20th minute David Morrison goal. There you go.
Maybe we should touch on that. The farce that this is the 7th attempt to try to get this game played.
Well, listen, that could easily tie in with what we were discussing about, obviously, the suspension and whatever. How can... I mean, I know that they've obviously given the reasons as to why this goes ahead tonight. But for Brora Rangers, they're what? The Lowland League and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Just... How can they play a Scottish Cup game and then just have that kind of time off? It doesn't add up to me at all.
It's just ridiculous mismanagement from people who have no fucking clue what they're doing.
Listen, I talk about Hearts players stealing a living. Neil Doncaster steals a living.
More money? What's he on, like 400 grand a year or something?
They reckoned it was about 350, yeah.
Yeah, just
I mean, that is
insanity.
Absolutely scandalous. It
mental.
really is.
But hopefully Camelon win. I mean, listen, you and me should be able to play for Hearts and we get a result against either of them. But how class would it be for I used to live near Camelon. I'd love it if they came to Tynecastle. That'd be class.
Well, no, because we're away, aren't we?
Oh,
first
bollocks! We're away.
But even then, you saying that would have been an amazing away day.
That would have been. Would have been able to go and see my old flats in Stirling. Oh,
you could have given us an exclusive kind of Perth to Paisley MTV Cribs edition.
That would have been amazing. Oh, fuck. Gutted.
But never mind. And obviously, the victors of that firstly play us at home, and then the winners of that play Stranraer at home. But even the draw, like, I'm looking at it tonight. Why did the FA Cup down south draw? I think it was the 3rd and 4th round, or the 4th and 5th round simultaneously. It doesn't make any sense to me. I hate the kind of potential outcomes. And I saw somebody tweet it actually. I think it was. Is it the Canadian? Is it Lambeau Jambo?
Mm-hmm.
Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and his tweet was really funny actually, where he sort of cited a potential outcome. I'll see if I can get it up. So, can't wait for the Scottish Cup 5th round draw when Hearts play away to Camelon or Brora Rangers or Hamilton Accies or East Fife or Stranraer. Like, the whole thing is a total shambles.
Listen, this is why Scottish football's the best in the world. Look at what's happened today with Celtic and Hibs. You would not get that anywhere else, ever. No, you have the 3 points. No, you have the 3 points.
Scottish football, the elite of the elite.
Exactly.
However, speaking of the elite...
Oh, what a segue that is.
Thank you very much. I received a message from Ian from Maroon Tinted Specs, who I'm going to give a wee shout out to, and he messaged me on the Perth Paisley account to ask whether Daniel and I would be up for compiling our own Vintage Maroon 11. So a little challenge which I thought would be the perfect way to kind of end today's podcast, seeing as we had no fixture at the weekend. So the challenge is to basically come up with a starting 11 of Hearts players with each one from a different season and only one player from said season. Now, quick disclaimer, I've been watching Heart and Midlothian since 2002, having been born in the greatest year of all time, 1998. Therefore, I have to pick 11 seasons from 18 years, which is a lot harder than it perhaps seems. So, are you wanting to get into this first, mate?
Yeah, sure. This is the thing, right? I'm older than you by a year. Never forget that. I'm older than you by a year. 3 Scottish Cups in my lifetime. 3 years.
I was waiting on that. This is like that pattern that Gary Lineker always chucks at Alan Shearer. Oh, Ian Wright, how many times did you win the FA Cup? Oh, twice or whatever it was. Yeah. Alan? It's like, none.
This is going to follow you forever. However...
Oh, it really will. It will haunt me.
You actually went to a game before I did. You went in 2002. My first game was...
I was brainwashed before you.
I went to Tynecastle aged 10 days.
10 days?
I got a tour around Tynecastle at 10 days old.
That is tremendous.
It's pathetic, is what it is.
Was Graham behind that?
Graham was the man who fell for the Gary Mackay Steven Photoshop, and I think you have someone else who fell for the Gary Mackay Steven Photoshop as well.
David Kennedy, hang your head in shame.
Absolutely embarrassing. The fact that Graham McIver knew it was photoshopped and still thought the club had put it out officially.
You need to only look at the skin tone, the varying skin tone, and it's a ghost white face, and yet the arms are just look as though they've had a 2-week stint in Mallorca. But
you can
never
see
mind.
Craig Gordon's beard coming through it. It's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. However, my first game was 2004, so I've only had like 16, 17 seasons to pick from.
It's tough.
So it's hard.
Tough.
However, I have just realised I actually have got a player from before I went. However, I watched the game at home.
Oh, that's fine.
So
that's
it counts.
right.
However, are you
that's
wanting to do my full team, then your full team, or you want to go position by position?
We had something similar where we went position by position. I think that's a good format.
I agree. Right, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go second. The floor is yours to enlighten us, seeing as I'll let age go before beauty.
Yes, that is absolutely... You need the experience in this situation, otherwise it's all going to go tits up. So... Right, listen, if you listen to the podcast that Adam hinted at there where we compiled a team previously, I'm not very good at sticking to rules. Right? So, there's a few... I think there's 3 people in here that I just had to put in, so the season that they correlate to doesn't necessarily mean that that's the reason they're in.
Right, okay.
That will make more sense as I go through. However, the first person is that person, is one of the 3. So in goals, I had to go with Craig
Christian
Gordon.
Naddy.
No. I'm not that mental. Craig Gordon. Now, I got very lucky here because with a lot of this, as Adam said at the start, if an individual is in a team from one season, no one else can be in from that season. However, I've managed to fit 6 people from the 2006 Cup Winners team into this team.
Oof.
That's
That is
impressive. One of them is
it
Craig
is.
Gordon. However, it is not for the 05-06 season. It is for the 2020-2021 season that we are currently in.
Ah, well played.
Exactly. I'm very impressed with myself, I will be honest. Basically, I wanted him in and I was thinking, if he hadn't re-signed, I would have had to use a previous season, probably that one, and I couldn't have anybody else. However, he re-signed. It's kind of... There's not real much point in discussing Craig Gordon because it's Craig Gordon. In my opinion, he's the best goalkeeper we've ever had in my lifetime. He's one of the best goalkeepers we've ever had at the club, full stop. An absolute legend, came through the club. He's not just... I mean, it's always great when you have somebody who is class that you brought in. However, it's extra special when they came through the club. They're a supporter of said team. We say it all the time. There has never been a man who has aged more perfectly than Craig Gordon. He's just the perfect package.
And folk love an academy graduate and record sale. Oh, yeah. We've bigged Craig Gordon up enough.
Exactly. He's in.
It's a great choice.
Is he in your team?
I do. He's not. He's not. I know it seems bizarre that he's not, but I think my reasoning is decent. So, we mentioned that 2017 season when obviously Michael Smith had joined the club amongst, many. And I've gone for the goalie that season, which was John McLaughlin. Reason being, I had absolutely no idea who John McLaughlin was prior to him signing. Hold my hands up. But after consistent top performances and, let's face it, a bang average season, I obviously soon did. And he was at the heart of 7 consecutive clean sheets, which nearly became 8, which obviously then became our club record. So statistically, and listen, I'd have loved to have kept him for longer. I think he's up there, personally. So I've gone John McLaughlin from the 2017-18 season, primarily because also the best league match I've ever been at, he kept a clean sheet in that win against Celtic. So top keeper.
Very fair. I think that for me, my top 5 keepers at Hearts, again, not in an order, but both Craig Gordon and John McLaughlin are in it, along with James McDonald, Antti Niemi, and I just loved Marion Kello.
I would not dispute any of them, personally, because obviously the old man's ranted and raved about Antti Niemi, even despite my younger years. So, no, I'd go along with that. And obviously, another key reason as to why I've gone McLaughlin here, you're very tactical in what you did, which was very smart, with obviously choosing this current season. But my 2005-06 is for another player, and I didn't opt for Gordon in 06-07 because then that's obviously when he left for Sunderland after the various links and what have you. So who's your right back?
My right back is the man that I hinted at earlier for the 1920 season, a season I think every single Hearts fan on the face of the earth wants to pretend never happened. However, he was the one bright spot. He has been very often the only bright spot of the last few years. It's Michael Smith. We've spoken about him a lot in this podcast. I just absolutely adore him, and he's my favourite right back to ever play for us. I got emotional at the end of that, apparently.
Understandable. Listen, it's funny, we've had 2 positions now and we've opted for 2 totally different players, but a player that you obviously mentioned along with Smith, or rather that I mentioned, was Callum Patterson, Dr. Funk himself. And obviously that season, the 2014-15 season, is the one that I've chosen, which was the only league title that we've sadly seen us win at the time of writing.
I've got no one from that season.
Have you not?
I've just realised that right now.
I was tempted to go for Sam because he's a fellow Pennycook boy and obviously one of my pals, but I think
Patterson was the star of that team.
Yeah, and it speaks volumes that from that season I've chosen a right back, because I think he's one of, we touched on Craig Gordon being an academy graduate. I think Callum Patterson's one of the best academy graduates certainly that we've seen us produce. So yeah, Dr. Funk seems a reasonable choice here.
The man who plays football as if he's playing pro clubs on FIFA. You just absolutely love to see it.
So a cult hero, if not a legend.
Absolutely.
So centre halves.
Right, well, we're going to make it 3 from 3 for different people.
Excellent.
Because there is no fucking chance you've got this guy in.
Oh, I know who it is. So,
as I said, shut up, that is the first letter of his name. Well done, you're correct. So, 2004-2005 was my first season. January 2005, played Berwick Rangers in the Scottish Cup at Tynecastle. We won 2-1. And lining up that day was a very good team. It featured Craig Gordon, it featured current manager Robbie Neilson, it had individuals like Phil Stamp, Kevin McKenna, who I love, couldn't get into this team, but I love Kevin McKenna so much. So many amazing people. However, the man that captained us that day, the man that quickly became my first ever favourite player, he captained us to Scottish Cup glory as well, not in this season, however, the next season. It is Big Elvis Stephen Presley. From till now, till the day I die, I will love Stephen Presley. I love him. His son is class in Football Manager as well, so there's that.
His son's doing bits and bobs for Brentford, isn't he?
He is indeed.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to have a
very... Aaron, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to have a very big future, and if it's, in fairness, if it's anything like his dad's in terms of honours and what he's going on to do, it would be an incredible feat to kind of match him. But yes, Stephen Presley, I know he's quite divisive, but nothing like, you can never,
to say the least.
It doesn't matter what happens, he was my first ever favourite player and I love him. Stephen Presley, my captain.
I cannot hold that against you whatsoever. That's fair enough, mate.
I know that you want to kill me, it's fine.
No, listen, this is what it's all about, opinions, but it's funny because I think we've finally got a similar season. Did you say 04-05?
I did indeed.
I have also opted for an 0405 centre back. Growing up, one of my favourite players, Andy Webster.
Another guy I wanted to get into this team, but I just couldn't fit him in. But what a man!
It's harsh. I mean, it's just he's been a member of the squad where we've won one of the two major honours in our lives. Scored one of my favourite derbies, that 2011-12 winning season, the 3-1 win at Easter Road.
Yes.
So yeah, I love Andy Webster, always have, and I don't want to make jambos of different generations feel old here, but 2004-05, that is retro hearts for us. So got to have Andy Webster in there. Your other centre half?
Very, very fair. I am not, however, including Andy Webster, despite the fact I would love to. I am going with a man that we've spoken a lot about, sadly, this season, which is a shame.
Oh.
Yes. So
I think we've got a similar player for once.
Yes, finally. 4 positions in. However, I weirdly, again, I forgot about this actually, but I spoke about him earlier, speaking about coups, and in that 2017-18 season that you've got John McLaughlin in,
you've gone for.
I am going with Christophe Berra.
That's weird, because I've got exactly 10 seasons beforehand. I've gone 2007-8. Yeah.
Well, that season from Christophe Berra, the return, is one of the best seasons I have ever seen a Hearts player have.
Fair comment. Can't disagree. It's like you say, watching him these days, it's just heartbreaking.
It's just it's really got, especially because, listen, stuff just happens to me. There's like things associated with my life that are always terrible, and one of them is that on my 21st birthday, when I was in attendance at Tynecastle as we beat Celtic, one of my favourite players of all time rips his hamstring off his leg.
And that was it after that, wasn't it?
That was it. That was absolutely it. So obviously, Hearts fans just now will view Christophe Berra through that lens. However, the moment he retires, he will just, and he still is now, even though what he's currently going through, he is an absolute legend. Again, another one we speak about, came through the ranks, had to fill really, really big shoes as well when he came through the team. Another one that we, of course, could have mentioned was his partner in the 07-08 season, Zalukis. Of course, it's just, there's so many players in here where you go, oh, for God's sake, I couldn't get him in. Like, Nielsen isn't in my team, who I'm gutted about, but that partnership of Zalukis and Berra was incredible. But I think Christophe Berra for us was at his peak in that 2017-18 season.
Interesting, because I would say that obviously him breaking through, he then became the youngest captain in the SPL after Craig Gordon left for Sunderland, and even with that weight on his shoulders, it didn't faze big Christophe at all. You mentioned Zal there. It's a great point, because as much as we've seen some absolute dross, we have seen a couple decent players in our time. So this is tricky, despite what folk may believe. But yeah, I think obviously I chose his breaking through phase, if you like. I mentioned the youngest captain in the SPL there, and obviously by the end of the 07-08 season, I think he'd gained international recognition with Scotland. So even despite Hearts' sort of horror showing in the league that season, so that tells you all that you need to know, really, and that even in an underperforming team, he was deemed good enough to represent Scotland, and then, similar to Stephen Naismith, like you say, ultimately reached the peak of his powers at the Prem, and delighted to obviously see him come back at the time. So solid, no nonsense, decent inclusion from us both. Well done, mate.
Another one who has also aged tremendously as well.
Yeah, agreed. Left back
is going with probably the best player I've ever seen at this club in terms of international approval, notoriety, the CV that he came in on.
No, I know who it is.
So this is my player from that 05-06 season when we won the Scottish Cup. I could not have
good choice
Takis Fisas out this squad. He had to be in it. The man arrived to us after winning the Euros.
Let that sink in.
Genuinely, let that sink in. When do we have a player that even won their own Player of the Year come in to us? Never mind won the European Championships.
It's funny you mention that, because one of my inclusions at a later date also won an international tournament whilst at Hearts. But Takis Fisas, solid inclusion. Could you imagine? Portugal are the reigning European Championship holders, with obviously it being knocked back. If CR7 ever gets bored of Turin, he's got a home in Gorgie.
Do you know actually what it is kind of a comparison of? It's similar to if somebody like William Carvalho came.
Yeah, sort of not like a mainstay in the team, but not a massive name.
Yeah,
as such. Yeah, that's good. That's a decent wee comparison. That
I just think one of the best on the ball players I've ever seen. He was absolutely incredible. Obviously, people are currently saying that our current left back Stephen Kingsley, he is the best left back we've had since Takis. And whether or not you agree with that, or you do agree, the fact that we've only heard that once and it's taken 15 years for us to hear that comparison, it says everything about the player that he was.
Baller, absolute baller. And you can't forget him singing the Champions League song as well.
Exactly.
So, you've gone for Takis Fisas. I've thrown it back to 2009-2010.
Interesting.
And I've gone, obviously, that left back has been a problem position, but I've gone for Lee Wallace.
That's fair.
Who, listen, 2019-20, I was tempted to include Wee Hickey because he just looks an absolute baller. But I've gone for Lee Wallace, given that some of the left backs that followed him were absolutely rotten. I've altered the time frame to include my left midfielder in the 2010-11 season. So this is where the challenge becomes tricky, in that if you're smuggling somebody in, you sort of have to give a decent justification for said season. But Wallace was attracting Premier League interest, and quite rightly so, I think, from Wolves. Won Hearts Players Player of the Year that season in 2009-2010. And let's be frank, he was a bright light in another, let's face it, dull season. So another youth prospect who you're gutted to see leave, particularly to Rangers, but breaking through, what a player. And Lee Wallace was one of his pals that played in the same youth setup at Hearts. I actually used to work with my dad, so my dad's met Lee Wallace and whatever. Stuart, I'll give Stuart a wee shout out if he's listening. Stuart's wedding, so Lee Wallace, top man, top player.
That's a very fair point. Again, he was one of the other left backs that I wanted to include because I love Lee Wallace, but totally. And
it's a tricky position,
absolutely.
I have to say.
There's only about 4 that you can put up for it, really.
No, of course.
So, I'm playing this as a 4-4-2, by the way. I don't know what you're doing.
I've gone for a 4-4-2 with a sort of shadow striker, if you like.
That's fair.
Which probably gives away who it is, but yes. Never mind.
I am going to my left mid, and I don't know, I think out of all of them, this is the one that we have the best chance of getting the same player and the same season.
Right.
Because my left mid is for the 2010-11 season.
As is mine.
And it is David Templeton.
Oh, baller. Absolute baller.
It is!
Loved.
We've got one matching.
Loved Temps.
So, of course, Templeton signed for us in another January transfer window, actually, January 2007. Took him a couple of years to kind of cement himself in the team. However, that 2010-11 season was absolutely the season to remember. He scored one of the best derby goals I've ever seen at Easter Road, where he picks the ball up and just runs through everybody.
Unreal.
And slots it past. He scored, I think he scored his first goal that year, not that season, and then by the time it got to the end of this season, It looked like he'd been scoring for us for seasons past. He was nominated and then won. No, he didn't win. He was nominated for PFA Player of the Year. However, he won Hearts Fan Player of the Year. It was just an absolutely incredible season from a position that is often inconsistent with individuals, but Templeton just was consistently brilliant.
And that's despite being at such a young age. I think he was only about 21, 22.
He turned 22 during the season.
So that's basically like me doing that now. What a scary thought. But no, it's funny. Gary Mackay Steven, I was so tempted to say that we've not had anybody like that since David Templeton. I love a tricky winger, and Temps was just the epitome of that. His Raj-wee hairdo seemed like one of those sort of street ballers.
Yeah.
And just a sort of old-fashioned type as well, one that can take somebody on, hit the byline, cut inside, look threatening, just a nuisance. The Anfield goal obviously came later on, and again, devastated when he was eventually sold to Rangers. But then I realised the extent that he went to in order to try and keep Hearts alive at that point. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that, because that's the sort of age that I was at a sort of tender age at that point. And when you lose somebody of David Templeton's calibre, particularly to Rangers, it was just a sore one. And it's only once you get a bit older you realise that it was for the best, in that he raised us money to keep us going. And that team, like you say, I mean, Templeton, Scatchell, Kyle, Elliott, the nostalgia. Absolutely.
And that's a good segue, actually.
Oh, perfect. Who have you got? I take it you're going to centre mid.
No, I'm going to my right. I'm doing my wide players first.
Right, okay. Who's on the right flank?
Speaking about nostalgia, it is a player who, this is, often you'll get players put in for like seasons. For example, Berra's season with me, 17-18, Temps' season, 10-11 there. This player is put in for a single game. And he was good for us. He was very good for us in points. He also had lulls. But this game, it is from the 06-07 game, probably the best derby I've ever seen in my life in terms of back and forth. The place is bouncing. You don't know who's going to win it. Because the 5-1, the 4-0 and stuff like that, we just walked through them. But the Boxing Day derby of 2006-07, where we go 2-0 up through a very early Paul Hartley goal, and then 2-0 up from a Jankowskis tap-in after Makowski is just in his continued form. Love you, Zibby, wherever you are now.
Halcyon days, can I just say.
Absolutely. However, John Collins' team did get it back to 2-1, and then they equalised with 2-2 with a Dean Shields penalty that subsequently saw him sent off for just punching Craig Gordon in the face. That
rat!
Exactly. However, the game was finished by my right mid, Salius Michelinis. I can't even say his name, I'm so excited. I'm actually so excited thinking about the goal. Salius Michelinis. And he just hits one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Miko's a worthy inclusion. I've actually gone for nobody, I don't think, from 06-07, have I?
Interesting.
Just scrolling through, I don't think so. So, good choice.
The ball comes to him after Novakovic takes the piss. No, it isn't Novakovic. Who is it? Who takes the piss on the left-hand side? Somebody does stuff. I was thinking of the Kevin Kyle.
Was it Chesnowskis?
It was Chesney. Chesney does a bunch of great inner workings with Hartley, and then it is teed up to Miko, and just before he hits it, it actually bobbles, and it's one of those where if that bubble had taken it one way, it would probably have went over the Gorgie stand.
Not so handsome.
Yeah. But he just hits it so perfectly, and as soon as he hit it, he started running away because he just knew Zibby can't move. Top corner. What a
Bedlam.
way to win a derby.
Yeah, Bedlam. That's an all-time Edinburgh derby classic, 100%.
It also led to me 4 years later, meeting John Collins as he came into my school to teach us football, and I made a room of 50 kids laugh at him because he did a Q&A first, and loads of people were asking questions about him and stuff like that. I didn't say anything until the teacher went, "Anybody got any questions?" I then put my hand up and I just went, "Hi John, what was your record as a Hibs player and manager against Hearts?" And he just went, "I never won any." And I went, "I know." And it just made everybody die laughing, and I embarrassed John Collins in front of a room of 14-year-olds.
Well played.
Fuck you, John Collins.
Well played.
Hate him.
The passing and movement of tempo.
Oh, I hate. That's such a good John Collins impression. What the fuck?
Thanks, mate.
It's alright. Who's your right mid? Is it John Collins?
Funnily enough, it's not. I don't think he'd particularly be improved with the passing, the movement, and the tempo in this team. However, obviously, I've got Callum Patterson at right back in my team, so Callum might have to do the attacking down the right wing for him. But I've gone for Ryan Stevenson because I absolutely adore Ryan Stevenson. I always will. I think he must regret leaving Hearts because of missing out on that Scottish Cup winners medal, and then obviously coming back. I don't think his importance can be underestimated in the 2013-14 season, which is the season that I've gone for here. Just absolutely gutted that we couldn't win that 2013 League Cup final given his brace against St Mirren. The goal at Easter Road in, I think, the quarter-final, absolutely ridiculous. We've discussed that on your FM stream at the weekend, so I'll give you a quick chance to plug that.
Yes, playing FM, second season, just signed Eamon Brophy and Stuart Finlay as free agents. Get involved.
You're welcome for the Stuart Finlay recommendation.
It's alright, even though he told me to fuck off the first time around.
But no, going back to Steve-O, I mean, an older head amongst a team of teens, his experience was invaluable, and I think he still managed to give us some great moments in what was arguably our trickiest season following Hearts, and picked up as sort of a rough diamond as such, a lower league gem. Easily played his part for us in the top tier, and I'd have loved to have seen Ryan Stevenson stay. He obviously mentioned that on Open Goal, the way that things ended, and still speaks so passionately about his time at Hearts. So absolutely love Steve-O. A decent inclusion, I think.
Absolutely. You're right though, Patterson's going to have to do everything for him on that right hand side.
Oh, that's absolutely. But listen, Callum Patterson bombs forward, so that's fine. I've got no qualms about that.
Very true. We then move into the midfield, and these are the two that the seasons don't correlate. I just needed to get these two in. Right.
I've gone for central midfielders that are actually 10 seasons exactly apart. So I've gone for 05-06, interesting I know, and 2015-16.
Wow. I've not went that adventurous.
Right, okay.
My first one.
Well, I was going to say I've sort of given clues for my two, but bash on with yours because I'm intrigued.
Well, my first one is the 03-04 season, which doesn't have a lot of importance, as I said, to him in that moment. However, what he went on to do at the club, I just couldn't not have him in. He signed for us then. He went on to lift the Scottish Cup. However, didn't get to finish the game in that cup final, which I will partly still never really forgive him for. It is Sir Paul Hartley,
who I've also opted for as one of the centre mids.
So he's your 05-06.
Yeah, from that team.
Wow. Talk to me about that then, because you have more of a reason to have him in a season. I just have him in because I want Paul Hartley to be in my team.
Well, I obviously had to choose somebody from that team, and given I'd opted for McLaughlin in goal, and you'll see my reasoning later on, I would go as far as to say that even despite my young age, Paul Hartley was the best central midfielder in the country that season.
Big claims.
Big claims, which I think are fully justified. I think, listen, that bromance he had with Rudy was unparalleled. His hat-trick in the Scottish Cup semi-final gets talked about tons, but not enough. The penalty against Aberdeen to seal the deal as league runners-up, obviously then becoming the first non-Old Firm Scottish side to participate in the Champions League.
With the most mental moment ever, because normally with a penalty, you get like the home fans kind of be like, yes, and the opposition fans be like, boo, fuck off, and then there's that half a second as they go to take it where there's silence. But the minute Hartley puts the ball down, Tynecastle is just in complete silence out of fear.
And then simultaneously erupts.
Yeah.
But no, just, I mean, what can I say about Sir Paul Hartley? A phenomenal midfield player. Started my sort of love and appreciation for those box-to-box types. They just don't make them like Paul Hartley anymore, and that is a decent inclusion for me, I think. Obviously, it was tough to choose somebody from that season, but I think it's justified given my reasoning later on.
That's very fair. And the one thing I would love, Paul, is if you could just not absolutely punt a Gretna player just as we're heading to penalties and you're basically our best penalty taker.
I was about to say, as best penalty taker, yeah. 100%.
But no, of course, he has to be in. And then my other centre mid is from the 07-08 season. Again, not really the season you think of him from.
Michael Stewart?
It's not Michael Stewart. Don't you even suggest that. How dare you? The man I'm most embarrassed to say that he has captained this club. Oh, it's just embarrassing, man. It's not him. It is the man that, as a young child, was one of my favourite players, got his name on the back of the shirt, and now, as a sad 23-year-old man, I can say I regularly speak to, and he was incredibly kind enough to come onto this podcast. It is Mr. Andrew Driver.
Never a central midfielder in his puff.
He's not. I messaged him about this and he went, that team's never winning with me in the middle.
Did he actually say that to you?
Yes, he did.
What a guy.
But I just, obviously, most notably on the left, however, Templeton had to get in that on that side. Andy Driver just, when on his day, he was absolutely unplayable. Of course, sadly plagued with injuries. However, he's one of the very few players I ever got on the back of a shirt. So I had to include him.
Along with the right back now.
I know. 4 of these people are the 5 I've ever had on the back of a shirt.
Don't tell me Stephen Presley's one.
Presley isn't one because his name's too long, so it would have been too expensive.
I'm intrigued to know now. So Smith, Driver,
Berra, and then somebody that I've not mentioned.
Oh,
oh no, there's 5 because I got Larry Kingston.
Larry Kingston. Oh dearie me.
Ken in that white away kit with the maroon stripes and the gold
and the orange sort of detail. Yeah.
That Kingston in the back of that. What a fucking idiot child I was, by the way.
When was that? Was that Umbro? That must
yes,
have
it
been
was Umbro. It was
08, 09?
Yes, roughly that. It was roughly 08, 09.
Yeah. And you're Larry Kingston on the back of that?
I don't know. I didn't get asked for it. I think I was given it.
Fair enough.
But who have you got as your other centre mid? 15-16.
Yeah.
Is it Wacky Madeo? He wasn't 15-16. He was after
15-16 would have been newly promoted, so it's a player that's played under Robbie. And you mentioned Takis Fisas with his international recognition. I've got another that ultimately we gave the platform to earn that international recognition.
Kenny Anderson?
No. With an African country.
I know who you mean now.
Jim. He comes from Cameroon.
I've wanted Jim in as well.
I've gone for Arnold Jim. I'm sick of saying it to all my mates, but we have not replaced Arnold Jim since he left the club.
We've no.
We really haven't. He seemed like a total waif and stray when we picked him up, and I don't think anybody was expecting much because if I remember rightly, it was in about September, October time as a free agent. But
it was similar to Hearing. It was similar to Hearing. We'd never heard
kind of.
Came through just this random league, and then he was class.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is obviously one to get in touch with London Hearts or whoever. But I'm assuming that he's the only player contracted to Hearts to win an international trophy whilst at the club.
That must be the case.
Probably going to chuck that out to London Hearts. Or if somebody can tell me, some stato listening to this, it must be the case. But I remember saying on Facebook that he's the best midfielder we've had since Rudy Scatchell. Willing to fight anybody on this issue, an absolute baller. Justified inclusion, personally.
He was class. I just always felt he got a rough time for folk towards the end. He was always the scapegoat.
And we mentioned it last week with Lee getting shunted out on the right. Maybe part of that was because June was played out position.
The amount of times he was chucked out on the right hand side when you could see we were desperate for creativity in the middle and Levine was just like, stand on the byline. And it was like, what is he going to do there?
Do you know, the two centre mids I've got, they're sort of both box to box, and I feel like they'd be brilliant at either end, really, with Jim and Paul Hartley. So I think that's a solid centre mid pairing. So happy with that. As for you've gone 4-4-2,
yeah,
right. So into the nitty gritty to finish it off. Who have you got up front?
Well, it could also kind of be a 4-4-1-1 with this individual playing in behind.
Well, that's what I've gone. I think I know what's coming here, but go on.
I think this is going to be our second player and season the same.
11-12 Rudy.
11-12 Rudy Scatchell.
Yeah.
Mainly because, listen...
Had to be.
Listen, Rudy could have been in, obviously, for 05-06. He could have been in for so many different reasons. He's the best player I've ever seen play at the club. For me, in my lifetime, he's the best player to ever play for us. But, for me, it's that semi-final against Celtic summed Rudy up for me. I know that Beattie always gets the headlines, and justifiably he won us that game, but Rudy's goal is the most Rudy goal I've ever seen. He pretends to move. That's what he does. He's so lazy he can't be bothered moving, but he pretends to move. So he drops a shoulder and he's like, I'm going to round this defender. I can't remember who it is. And the defender fully buys it. And then all he does is just kind of walk through them and slot it past Forster.
It's one of those iconic goals that when you're watching it, you don't realise just how big it is. And it's one of them where I was right behind the goal at a Barry view, sort of midway up the stand. And I can still visualise it to this day. I really can. And it's absolute bedlam. I mean, I'd been 13, about to turn 14, and I can still remember that. I'm 22 now.
Also, on that day...
What a guy.
I've told this story before, so I'll tell an abridged version. Driving back from that, we'd put my brother's scarf in the back seat. We hear a beep of the horn, and we look, and it's Rudy on the team bus at the horn, banging on the window, beeping the bus horn at us, and then he motioned for us to follow, and we followed him to Rickerton, and it was just incredible.
Like you say, the best player we've seen in maroon and white, the sweetest left foot I've ever seen, a god amongst men. He had to be a choice for us both.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because now obviously we've gone basically the same formation. Because you're right, I've slotted him as a kind of attacking midfield / shadow striker, if you like. Yeah. So, but I'm intrigued to see who you've got him in behind.
Right. There was so many options here. In modern day, you could argue Naismith, Lafferty, So, going back a wee bit, Jankowskis, Bednar,
even Zayfouk.
Zayfouk, absolutely. Yep. Jankowskis, Bednar. Bednar's one of the best players I've ever seen play for us, but I couldn't fit him in. Jankowskis I adore, couldn't fit him in. We're going back even further, and for me, this is the earliest season on my list.
Oh, as it is mine, I think. 0203.
It's 0203.
Oh, who have you got? Oh, yeah, it'll be different. It'll be different from mine. You'll have chosen the other one from me.
Surely it's not. So, on my 5th birthday, Hearts did me the pleasure of scoring 5 goals for me in an Edinburgh derby And
did this man score 1 or 4?
This man scored 4.
Oh, yes! I've got Mark De Vries as well.
What? So our 2 strikers are the exact same and from the same seasons?
Rudy in behind MDV. Love that.
What a man.
Yeah. First Hearts hero, like we touched on. I think it was the episode that we had Robert Borthwick on. My first match was at 4 years old, December 2002, 2-1 win over Livy, courtesy of an Andy Kirk brace. However, fully aware of Mark De Vries and his Derby debut, those exploits, and ultimately, even then in the following seasons, I think he obviously netted the winner against Bordeaux in France, and arguably one of the greatest sort of Euro wins, certainly in our lifetime. And could do a job with Rudy in behind him, definitely. So, decent inclusion, mate. Just at us.
I know. Again, Andy Kirk's another fantastic shout. I love Andy Kirk.
Yeah.
A lot of it is down to that one game, just because it's so special for me. My 5th birthday, we scored 5 goals against Hibs. It's the first Edinburgh derby I have memories of. Because
I think it probably is mine as well.
As I've said numerous times,
even though I wasn't at the game or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't allowed to go because it was my birthday.
Poor Graham.
I know. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate it. However, he got to see the other 5-1, so it's fine.
Every cloud.
Exactly, but just again another one who kind of came from. Maybe this is just me looking back because I was so young, but just a man who kind of came from obscurity. This big, fucking huge Dutchman who just arrived and just ripped up the league.
Yeah, cool character, Mark De Vries, isn't he?
Yeah.
No, so that's quite something. I did not. As soon as you said 2002-03, I was convinced you would go with Andy Kirk.
It was tight. I love Andy Kirk so much. He's an amazing human being.
That's a decent duo up front, to be fair.
I know that would get. However, if you put them in modern day, they'd get 2 goals between them because that's what we do to strikers now.
Fact. So, are you going through your team? Kind of say we do like a keeper, or just a list of player and position. Yeah. If you run it through, because we've obviously got some differing time periods and player selection, so
absolutely. Give
us your sort of 1 to 11 if you like.
So in goals for the current season we're in, 2020-21, Craig Gordon. Right back for the 1920 season, Michael Smith. 1 centre half, my captain, 04-05 season, Stephen Presley. Other centre half for the 17-18 season, Christoph Berra. Left back, 05-06 cup winning season, Takis Fisas. Left mid, 10-11 season, David Templeton. Right mid, 06-07 season, Salius Mikalainis. Centre mid, out of position, 07-08 Andy Driver. Other centre mid, 03-04 Paul Hartley. In the number 10, I guess you'd call it, 11-12 Rudy Scatchell. And up front, 02-03 Mark De Vries. Who have you got?
That's smashing. So I've got 2017-18 John McLaughlin in goal, a back four of 2014-15 Callum Patterson, with 2004-05 Andy Webster, and my skipper 07-08 Christoph Berra, with Lee Wallace from the 2009-2010 season at left back. Midfield quartet of 2013-14 Ryan Stevenson, 2015-16 Arnold Hume, 2005-06 Paul Hartley, 2010-11 David Templeton, with 11-12 Rudy Scatchell in behind 2002-2003 Mark De Vries.
Absolutely fantastic.
I guess what we're asking here is, can Jambos do any better? And if they can, feel free to fire a tweet to either Maroon Tinted Specs or ourselves, ideally both, and because I'm sure that we'll retweet any ones that we get. And I think it's a good challenge because, particularly for younger listeners like obviously us two, given the time constraint that you're sort of limited to, and obviously the rules that go with it. So yeah, that's 2 solid teams, mate. I think we've done pretty well.
Who would win?
Oof.
I think I'm fucked with Driver in the middle, like.
Hey, you say that, but I'll need Callum Patterson to put in some shift down the right hand side. I don't know. Maybe we'll leave that to the listeners. If we'll get some sort of graphic on the go, and we can have it side by side, and we'll leave it up to the listeners
Yeah.
to decide who wins. What? I mean, I know it's obviously a Hearts team, but could you call it like some sort of team name? Have you got like a team name for yours?
No.
I'll go with the Snooker and Darts. There you are.
Brilliant. You're an absolute genius.
Thanks, mate.
I was just about to think of a team name, and I've just seen Brora Rangers have just taken the league in the lead against 10-man Camelin.
Oh dear.
So it
Oh
looks
dear.
like that's happening. However, I'm going to
Look
go
at that.
with Elvis's 11
Oh,
for mine.
God's sake.
So get that up, yes. However, thank you very much for listening to this episode. It's been a bit all over the place in terms of me just jumping back and forwards, but I've liked how fluid it's been. I hope you all feel the same. So yes, we are at Perth to Paisley. You can get us at Perth to Paisley on all the social medias and YouTube, where if you want to watch the video podcast of this, currently it's just a photo. This week it's a photo of Gary Mackay Steven's face. Loving that. Yeah, please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It massively helps us out. Please don't forget, as Adam said, tweet us your favourite all-time 11s. However, you have to have the caveat, all from different seasons. Try and do it. It is harder than you think. Adam, where can people get you on social media?
People get me on social media at Adam T. Kendo, and you can tag either myself or Daniel, as well as Perth to Paisley and Maroon Tinted Specs in your 11s. We'll get bombarded with them. What about yourself?
Absolutely. I am at Mackay with the Mark. We will be back next weekend, hopefully after having played Alloa away, but with the way that everything's going, I don't know. Hopefully
we'll
though,
see.
Yeah, we will see. Hopefully though, we will have played and we'll have got a win, and we'll be back next week. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
What the JTs?